Hey guys, Derek Knight here. For those of you that don't know a lot about me, a lot of my career as a personal trainer, support worker, health professional, psychology grad is to help people. And the reason why I got good at this craft is because throughout my life I've had to deal with some adversity, some circumstances which I was born into that I had to overcome.
Other kids join in, you can't afford it, you can't afford it. And his father is an alcoholic.
A lot of people go through this, and in my personal opinion, is the only way to become successful is to overcome certain types of adversity, is to have a good team around you to support yourself.
That's a team, gentlemen.
And in this video, I'm going to introduce you to my dad. And for those of you that know me from my past will know that my dad had his own issues. We're going to talk a lot about how to change lives intrinsically means inside your body, and what the external life, which is outside, how that impacts us. So Dad, I'm going to put the camera on you. This is my dad. This is Greg Knight. Say hi, Dad.
Hi, Dad. Hi, guys.
So Dad, let's talk a little bit about, well, first of all, where'd you grow up? Which city did you grow up in, Dad?
Well, I was born in Ontario, or Southern Ontario. I was born in, Weston. I lived off of Dixon Road up until I was about 4 or 5 years old, and then moved to Clarkson. And lived in Clarkson from an early age, approximately 4 or 5 years old, up until about 10 or 11 years old in Clarkson off Bonner Road, and moved from there to another part of Clarkson, other side of Southdown Road, off of Barsuda.
So people that don't know where Clarkson is, if they're watching this in like England or Australia, what city is Clarkson in?
It's just outside of the city of Toronto. It's actually in a city called Mississauga now. Right. It used to be called the town of Mississauga, but it's now a city. It's Mississauga, South Mississauga.
Right, and so that's where you grew up, and that's where you were born.
That's where I spent my preteen years.
Right. And where are you now? Currently, where do you currently live?
Currently now, I am residing in a van.
Gentlemen, say hello to the second base mobile. Wicked!
I don't have a place to call my own. I don't have a home. I'm, as you might want to say, maybe homeless, but I'm living in a van, and anywhere between Mississauga and Oakville, back and forth.
So, those of you, so what my dad is saying.
So you're saying what you're saying that makes sense. You're saying
is that he lives in a van. He's homeless.
Living out of my van. Yes.
Out of his van.
Second base mobile.
Right, and myself, I live in an apartment building. I do work as a personal trainer, support worker, and do you feel like I've helped you at all in this process?
Absolutely, yes.
Right, and for me personally, I don't feel like I've done enough to help him, right? And there's no way either of us look for handouts ever, right? We work at our lives best if we can. So currently, we're currently in November, almost in December, and this time of year means that it's going to get cold for us, and for him and his van.
Second base mobile.
And for me in my small apartment with a roommate, I won't be able to do my part to take care of him. And I work as a support worker, means I work with people with special needs. Frequently. I've been doing this for, well, do you know how long I've been doing this for? So I don't have to keep yapping them about it.
Probably 5 years plus, I guess now. 5 to 6 years. So
I started in 2010, and that was after I was at York. Because of them, I got the opportunity to work in that community, and now I'm still involved in it. However, for me, it's tough to feel like I can help anybody else if I can't help my own dad through this process. Right? My family is really important to me, always has been, and that comes from your work ethic. When I was a kid, I remember in the mornings driving to hockey and putting me through hockey, and we didn't grow up in a lavish lifestyle. As a matter of fact, behind me you will see a building I grew up in. Actually, you probably see our apartment building right over right there. That's where we grew up, on the second floor. On the third floor, where else were we? second floor, third floor.
Lived on the first floor.
That's right, the first floor, right down
the
there.
third floor.
With the van's in the way.
2 floors above that.
Yeah, over there on the third floor.
Yep.
So this is Glen Aaron Collegeway, Mississauga. So give you guys a brief overview. I love road hockey that way. This one played my road hockey. And my dad worked his ass off at a company called Torcad to put me into hockey, have me play sports. Do you mind telling them why I got into sports or why you got me into sports as a kid?
Well, as a child, Derek had some significant health issues regarding breathing.
I can't breathe.
I suffered, quite significantly from an ailment called asthma,
Cancer my asthma. Sucks to your asthma.
which is a breathing disorder which affects the lungs. And anytime it gets cold or damp or excessive, exertion puts pressure on the lungs and you can't breathe. The lining of the lungs become filled with a liquid and you almost drown in your own liquid in your lungs because you can't breathe. Your lungs cannot expand.
Why must life be so hard?
So the doctor said when he was a very young child, we would take him out for a walk in a stroller, and when it was cold, and it didn't have to be wintertime, it could be in the fall or even mid-spring, he would have a really hard time. And, the doctors suggested that we keep pushing through this particular ailment, and he would hopefully grow out of it.
Hi, everybody.
Well, as time passed or years passed, it was getting a little bit better, and he had some health issues in school and things like that. And the doctor suggested more athletic exertion. So we looked at a few different sports to put him into, and we tried a couple of them, and he seemed to respond well to t-ball and soccer and a couple other things. So we asked about whether we could put him into hockey because it still is my favorite sport. So I guess you could say put him into a sport that was my passion to see how he would respond.
Okay, son, just remember to have fun out there today, and if you lose, I'll kill you!
I think I did pretty well.
And he did very well,
Thanks,
considering what we were told would be very limited amount of exposure he would have to the elements that that hockey provides,
Sucks to your asthma.
which is a very cold environment because you need to play on ice.
Wow.
Plus the physical exertion that's involved in it.
Right.
And over time, hockey seemed to be the magic elixir. It seemed to bring him joy and happiness. It got him out and also helped him as he grew older, 7, 8, 9, 10.
10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock, we're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
A lot of the symptoms or the seriousness of the ailment that he was suffering from seemed to dissipate, which was really good. We saw significant progress. So we kept him in it, and we kept him pushing harder and harder. Put him into more hockey, summer hockey, winter hockey, hockey schools, hockey camps, skating training. And he got better and better as time gone on. There was a huge difference from the age of 7 or 8 to the age of 12.
For me, where I was, I knew I had to work. I knew I had to work at this to become good at it because I was good and I was having fun. But 2, I wanted to feel better. I was tired of wheezing, tired of coughing, and tired of being sick. And I really wanted to feel better and do better. However, I do remember always having my inhaler on the bench, that kind of thing. If I ever needed it, it was always there.
Sometimes 2.
Right.
Sucks to your asthma.
I had the brown one, and I had the Ventolin, the Beclevin, I think they were called at the time, right?
Yeah.
And afterwards, I got into lacrosse, which was complete 180 in terms of environment, right?
Yeah.
And you were my coach for that, right? And we won a championship together. So sports was always a big part of my life.
Sports. Bart rides up in the front seat today because he's a good guy at sports.
It is where I am right now as a personal trainer. And this is the guy that got me into it, right? This is the guy that got me motivated into playing sports and doing well. I was around 15, I think, when I stopped playing hockey. And I don't regret playing hockey, not for a minute, but I knew what it was doing to the family. Hockey's not a cheap sport, right? And my dad worked really hard, like 12-hour days, shift work. My dog is his Tank. He worked really hard throughout his life to be successful, right? And helped me be successful. And to see him right now in this situation is really tough for me. Although, we're going to get to the hard part in a second. It's why we're here. So how do we get the situation now for all the hard work you put in all those years putting me in sports? How do we end up in this situation now where you're in your van?
How did it come to this?
You have to ask yourself a question that is, how does somebody who has such a competitive background, where playing sports, the ultimate goal is to win.
You play to win the game.
Find themselves in a situation where that competitiveness, the competitive drive, doesn't seem to be there anymore. What's the answer?
The will to win, right? You're saying?
Well, it's the competitiveness, the fight.
I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's gonna win that itch. And I know if I'm gonna have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that itch. Because that's what living is.
As they say. Where's that fight? Kind of a long story, make a long story short. I've had my struggles over the last 7-8 years. A couple of different jobs, a couple of different work environments that didn't work out. A couple of different financial situations that, caused me some problems. Legal problems, etc., etc. I could go on and on. But throughout it all, there was always the battle. There was always the fight. And the most difficult part is, when you realize, or when I realized that as you get older...
when you get old in life, things get taken from you.
That competitive spirit starts to kind of go away a little bit. And as you get older, that's when you're supposed to be comfortable. And the fight is not supposed to be at the same level, the same intensity. I guess you can say, I settled. I settled for what is or what was. And that was a mistake. In order to continue to keep moving in a forward direction, you always have to keep fighting for what you believe in.
You gotta fight for your right.
Right.
And when you stop fighting for what you believe in, you could potentially end up in a situation like I find myself in now, which is having to start all over again, basically from the beginning. Rebuild your life, rebuild yourself, rebuild your self-esteem, rebuild your credibility, and things like that. And it's with dealing with specific individuals who know what they're talking about, who are able to read through the BS when a person's putting it out there. You begin to become more self-aware, more reflective on your weaknesses.
Sucks to your ass, Mom.
And you need to find your strengths and build on your strengths. The weaknesses are something that are going to be there, and they're not going to go away, regardless of what anybody says. But you got to find the strength that you have. character, your your will to survive.
So what I talk a lot about with people is their values.
Mm-hmm.
Where I talk about like what are your values? What really do we value? So I'm gonna bring up. Do you remember how old I was when I left home?
What a twist!
Before I went to university.
You were, I think, dating.
Yeah, I was dating her. Yeah, I was dating her. Yeah, don't say her name. Right.
Won't bring her name.
Right.
So I guess you'd have been in grade 12, I guess. So you probably would have been 17 to 18, somewhere in that neighborhood.
What?
It was grade 10.
What?
It was grade 10.
What?
I left home, right, and I spent a day. I spent a little while living with my really good friend of mine. I'm gonna keep him nameless as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right, and I learned as a young kid how to deal with elements, how to deal with fear, how to deal with the what life really could be like.
I'm special.
Right.
Diversity.
So when we're talking about like how to find perspective on things, find what we value, I went through it in my own way as a kid, right? And you went through your own stuff as a teenager too. This is what most people forget, is that we all go through our own problems. We all have our own problems as a teenager. We all go through our own battles of what's right and what's wrong. Whoa. Even you did too. From those moments as a teenager, and anything you can think of as a teenager or as a young man that may have started you down a wrong path. Or a path, not just a wrong path, but a path that led you here.
Harvard, here I come. Psst, Barney, my dad's asleep. Want a beer?
I think we all have experiences in our youth that would you could look at it and say, well, if that didn't happen, this might have happened.
Who's up for Chinese?
You're ruining my life.
I think that's impossible to quantify or qualify because, so many things happened in my youth after the time I turned 14 to possibly say that any one of those particular situations, if would have been different, would have changed the path of which I was on. Well, the only one I could look at and say of any significance would have been moving all the way across the country at the age of 14, 15, my first year of high school, to BC, to Vancouver, just outside of Vancouver, with the family because of a job transfer that my dad had. And that was about the only thing that I could say that would have had the biggest impact on my youth or in my life at that time.
I know you don't want me to, but I miss home. I miss Minnesota. You need me to be happy, but I want my old friends and my hockey team. I want to go home. Please don't be mad. Oh, sweetie.
We're not mad. You know what? I miss Minnesota too. I miss the woods when we took hikes.
In the backyard where you used to play.
Spring Lake, where you learned to skate. Come here.
not to say that because of that, it's where I am. Only that in itself, again, was the biggest impactful thing that happened to me in my youth. Other things happened, of course, but that's the most impactful.
And during that, how did you deal with that stress as a young teenager, as a young man? How did you deal with that? The stress of being picked up, moved to a new place, having to leave everything you developed behind.
Oh, I definitely took it the wrong way.
Are you drinking whiskey? I'm troubled.
I definitely became more emotionally outward. I guess we could say there was probably more anger involved in it. By myself, I guess I was running away from that particular situation and not facing it, because I turned to different elements in my life that
I'm troubled.
Perhaps took me down a path that I shouldn't have gone on, but I can't look back and say that that's any one of those particular reasons is why that I'm here. The fact that I think that nobody recognized that this is what I was going through, and the help today is different than the help that was available back then.
Of course, yes.
People didn't look at you and say, oh, you've got a social problem, or you have a deficiency, a mental, issue that's going on that needs to be dealt with. People used to just say, it's okay, they'll get over it, or he'll get over it, or she'll get over it.
Toughen up kind of thing, walk it off.
Yeah, and that's kind of the philosophy that I took into sports. It was kind of the same thing, was that, suck it up, buttercup, or kind of...
Look! Just a flesh wound.
It's kind of the same philosophy that we had as a parent too, though, right?
Yeah.
Your parent was like, you'll be okay, you just got to keep working.
Rather than reach out and ask if, is there anything I can do? Can I help? Or can we do anything else? It was the only type of reinforcement that you get is, that type of aggressive reinforcement that basically tells you just to suck it up and get over it.
Dad! What are you doing?
To
Stop!
football.
Dad! Okay.
We call it authoritarian. Or,
I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, I would say like do as I say, and that's it. I mean, authoritarian style education.
But I didn't reach out and ask for any help. I didn't realize that I needed any help.
Right.
But then again, all the signs were there. Poor education, poor grades in school, lots of time missed at school, other, things that had gone on and were going on at that time, rebellion in the family, different types of, cried out for, some intervention there. And there wasn't anybody there to intervene, because parents thought that they could handle the situation. They could take care of it themselves.
I don't blame you, son. I wasn't much of a father. Maybe it starts with the way my dad raised me. Yes, it's clear to me. It's just been one long unbroken cycle of...
Somebody throw the goddamn bomb!
And again, that's where we're having this conversation, right? Just trying to figure out, not only with me, because I don't really know what to do other than have this conversation, right? I don't have the funds or the resources to be like, here you go, I can take care of you. I don't have that.
On my house, I got my dad a car, make my sister rich, she'll never work again. And
when they're not on their particular addictive substance,
right.
Reality is so different.
Reality is different when we're sober in comparison we're on whatever drug, right? Yeah. So
that's what I'm saying.
We don't find out who we are until we're sober.
Yep.
And that's often why I tell people, like, can we go through our day without, like, self-medicating? Can we go through our day with living in reality and accepting that what things are the way they are?
That's why I was
and how to progress, right?
Was so
daily
good
progress.
At one thing, even if I was drinking, but so bad at communicating and so bad at expressing myself emotionally when I was drinking, because those aren't things that you do very well when you're drinking.
No, alcohol does certain things in the brain that don't allow us to control ourselves.
It builds you,
Shuts off your
gives you
frontal
self.
Now there's the inflated sense of self-esteem.
Confidence. You can almost feel like you can walk on water. But when it comes to communicating, it comes to having emotions, when it comes to having feelings, those things are pretty much shut down.
So it's off your prefrontal cortex, yeah.
So once you deal with sobriety, then you start to realize that all of those emotions and feelings that you should have been using to help deal with the problems that you were having, that you didn't have, that's where a big issue comes in. How do I deal with this? Now you don't have coping skills. Your coping skills have virtually vanished because your only way to cope with things was my only way of coping with things was in an alcoholic haze or an alcohol-induced haze.
Right.
And without that, it's a far different thing. That's what got me into trouble with not dealing with the problems that I was having because of those types of issues. And then once I stopped the abusing of alcohol and things like that, I realized I have all these problems, and then I don't know what do I do with them? How do I fix this problem? And I didn't reach out for help until it's too late. Until it was complete collapse of my personal life. And all the warning signs were there, and everybody was saying, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this, you got to do that. Yeah. I basically said, you're all full of shit. And guess what? Guess who was full of shit? Wasn't them.
Oh, man.
Nope.
Wow.
So, not that I don't have the ability to be able to rebuild my life. Because I have the tools. Do I have the time? Time is the enemy now. Time is not the friend. It's been 5 months since I started this journey.
Father's Day. Since Father's Day. Since Father's Day.
6 months since I started this journey. And I'm no further ahead now than I was 6 months ago. As a matter of fact, I'm further behind. So I guess the bottom line is I now have to take all those steps that I didn't want to take because I thought I could do it myself, and I can't, obviously, in order to start the rebuilding process.
Well, that's the best I can, right?
It's got nothing to do with you. It has to do with me. If the refusal to accept the reality for what it is the reason why I'm in this situation, then the problem lies squarely on my shoulders. It's a reality check. Something that for 25 years, never bothered to think about. Never worried about that reality check.
What do you say to these people about reality? It's cold out there, right?
Well, if it's colder in your heart than it is outside, then you got a bigger problem than worried about how cold it is outside.
No doubt.
Because the first step in recovery, first step in recovery is admitting you have a problem.
Yeah. No
and
doubt.
until you can admit that you have a problem, doesn't matter how big or how small, you can't start the repair process. You can't. It's impossible. I realize that. I never admitted I had a problem. Everybody else did. Not me. You're all full of shit. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, guess what? Fix the problem is admitting or realizing that you have a problem. That's a hard thing.
Right.
When you're 50 plus years old and you look back at your life or you reflect on your life, it's not always the good things that you remember when you finally start to admit that you have, or come to grips with whatever problems that you have. It's more the negative things that have a bigger impact. That's why you need somebody to talk to. That's why you need somebody to listen to what you have to say. But those people, or that person, has to have specific qualifications to understand what it is you're saying. Because they're only words. They're just words.
There's things in between the lines that make it important, right? There's things
Absolutely.
that we have to read between the lines. People are saying something. There's often something else that they're trying to
What
convey.
is it they're meaning?
Right. So next step is, first of all, I appreciate you sharing all this. I'm sorry about some of the cuts in the video. It's just what happens. What can we do now to go forward? Right? What can we do now to go forward to improve the situation that we're in? Right? Like, I'm going to keep plugging away.
Harping on the fact that this is actually reality. Okay? Because I think people misunderstand, or people will misunderstand that. Okay? I said this to you earlier when I was talking about this, and maybe not understanding or getting the correct words out. When you're living in the bubble that I'm living in, you have a tendency to shut out reality.
What do you mean? You mean people?
I have a tendency to shut out reality.
Okay.
It's a fact of living in the situation that I'm living in right now. Okay?
Okay.
It's like having tunnel vision. Okay? Everything around you is there, but you're only seeing, or I'm only seeing, me.
Right.
And that's the survival instinct of it. It's what's the reality of what it is that I'm doing? Am I looking at what the impact of what I'm doing is having on everybody else or anybody else? No. Because the reality of it is, what's the impact of what I'm doing having on me?
Right.
And that's where you have to be realistic about it. I have to be more in tune with what's happening, because it's so easy to shut out the outside world. It really is, and people have to understand that. I think that's what I'm seeing about, that's kind of, maybe I'm understanding about how come so many of these people that are out there are having problems overcoming their personal issues, whether it's the anxiety or the fear or the lack of acceptance, is they're not being self-aware of the reality of what it is they've either done or what it is they're doing. They're going through the motions.
Right.
Or I'm going through the motions. And that's not living. People, that is not living. That is existing.
Right.
Existing only. And existing is a day-to-day thing. So what's the next thing? And you tried to explain this to me before. Make a plan. What are you doing today? What are you doing tomorrow?
It's like, make a damn schedule.
Just say, make a 3-day plan, make a 7-day plan, make a 30-day plan.
So easy for me to say, I'm making phone calls, I'm talking to people, I'm going to places, I'm doing this, and I'm doing that. But the results speak for themselves. If you're doing all of this, or if I'm doing all this, and I'm not getting the results, I'm doing something wrong. And that's the perspective I have to have. What is it I'm doing wrong?
Right.
And I got to figure it out, because this is no means to an end.
So from there, if you... Well, first of all, my dad's skilled when it comes to, what do you want to call it?
I'm an industrial maintenance mechanic.
Industrial maintenance mechanic. This guy can
Certified welder, industrial maintenance mechanic. Work on many different things, mechanical, electrical. I've got an electrical certificate from Sheridan College for basic electrical, PLC, you know,
So are
lots
we?
of different things, but that's not the problem. The problem is an issue with taking the abilities that I have and transferring them into a viable way of earning a living. I've done that for the better part of 20 plus years, 25 years.
Did you do it? Did you do it with the best of your effort the entire time? Do you think
Yes.
you could? Okay.
Yes,
Do you,
absolutely.
Do you feel like you could have put more into it in terms of
No,
being?
no.
Okay.
No.
Do you feel like the addictions got in the way of the performance or the person that you wanted to become?
I think the addictions got in the way of the person, not the performance.
Okay. Right. The performance is like you heard it all the time with the old athletes, right? They would go drink before games, have beers before games, cigarettes in the middle of games, that kind of thing. The world isn't like that anymore, right? Now we're trying to be as sober as we can. Your mind is into your business and you're conscious of what you're doing. That's when we become professionals. That's when we become completely ingrained in the process of what we are meant to do.
Yeah.
Is when we're sober and ready to do it with all of our mind, all of our body, all of our effort, and trying to develop that skill. I think also part of, I'm going to add something here, is that throughout my life, you always talked about continuing your education in whatever field, right? And we talked about some ways you can do that, continue your education, other than just like read newspapers, some like videos and go to university classes or open that stuff, that kind of stuff. Is that something you're open to going forward, is continuing your education? Yeah, maybe?
Well,
you know?
you should always be looking at upgrading your knowledge base. Always. I don't think that there is any question that's a necessity in today's day and age, because the world is changing so quickly. You know, just being able to read and write isn't anywhere near efficient enough to survive in today's world. You have to be tech savvy at the same time, because in most fields you are dealing with PLC programs, computers, things like that. Regardless, it doesn't matter whether you're a laborer or not. You know, that's just the modern era that we live in. It's no longer good enough just to be able to lift the greatest amount of weight, or, you know, run the fastest mile. It doesn't make any difference. That the computer age is upon us, and that's what you have to have. So if you're not looking at upgrading your skills consistently, even the older you get, you will soon fall behind the younger generation, and their skill level will pass you by quickly. So I just recommend for anybody that, you know, that ever listens to it, learning is something you should be doing until you no longer have the cognizant ability to be able to learn. You should always be learning.
Life is learning.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
The world is changing. It's changing rapidly.
So there's a minute left. We'll do a minute more of this. I just want to call it interview or therapy, whatever you want to call it, right? Chat session. You can call it whatever you want. I'll call it chat session for you guys.
But just want to make something a little
final minute remaining
more clear for people to understand that. You know, substance abuse can be just about anything from alcohol to drugs to medication to, you know, to different types of things that take control of your life and alter your life in a way that doesn't allow you to function on a normal basis day in and day out. If you took that substance away from that person, what does that person have left to function on? That's the finding out what the person is all about.
Right.
That's where you have to build and find the character for that person, and not within the substance that the person. Your life can't be based on whether you drink or don't drink. Your life has to be based on whether or not you have the ability to function as a person.
Best wishes, good health, take care.
There's this old idea, you know, that you have to rescue your father from the belly of the whale, right? From some monster that's deep in the abyss.